all for coming out. I heard there is 100% chance of rain today, and probably 100% chance of flooding and lightning striking houses. So thank you all for coming out in this most inclement weather. And for those of you that don't spend a lot of time at Start Garden, I haven't been here too often, we've made a video because this space morphs and it changes quite a bit throughout the day and throughout the week and throughout the month. So we made a video to sort of explain the story, give you a feeling of what it's like to be here. And some of you may have already seen it, but I will play it for those of you that haven't, and we'll get started like that, all right? So it turns out I was fiddling with the presentation earlier this morning, and I mixed up my slides. That's probably never happened to you. Okay, here we go.
Start Garden starts from sort of the basic premise that we actually don't know much at all, that the best way to move forward in this crazy world of starting things is to actually start as many things as possible. So, you know, we have our ideas, we have some thoughts, we're going to share those thoughts. We're by no means the final word on these things. To some extent, we're a victim of our own sort of historical success in the Midwest. We're this cradle of industrial production in the United States, where we think business is big, that things are more forecastable than they really are. I think has really been a hindrance to us in thinking about how to get startups going. It's like we lost sight of that fact that every business really started as somebody's project first.
There's an urgent feeling today that across many sectors and verticals, the world needs new innovations. Today, we're launching a new venture capital fund. In fact, it is a $15 million venture capital fund. It's called Start Garden. Start Garden will invest $5,000 in 2 ideas every week.
The 30-page business plan is not as valuable as we think it is. The best way to figure out if something's working is to put it out into the world and see what the world sends back to you.
I'm Dominic Sorensen, the owner of Scoville Farms. We are a premium pepper products company. I love, having a whole fridge full of condiments and sauces and no food in the fridge, so I have to figure out something really cool to do with those ramen noodles and that sauce. Our first product is Everyday Sweet and Spicy Habanero Sauce. It is a sweet and spicy multi-purpose condiment, and kind of the magic to it is we figured out a way to draw back the spiciness of the habanero and leave the flavor behind.
With these weekly $5,000 investments, we're just looking for basic information about who you are, what the market is, what your idea is, how it's different.
Sitting in a Tree makes wedding website templates for couples who want to share all of their wedding information online. We aim to make websites that sort of match the amount of time and effort that couples put into every other aspect of their big day.
Every week we make 2 $5,000 investments, one of them based on a public endorsement process, one of them we select internally at Start Garden. That public endorsement process lets things in that we wouldn't necessarily have picked ourselves.
Reindeer Cam is it's a live streaming feed of Santa's reindeer on the internet 24/7. But probably the coolest part is that it brings the magic of Christmas alive and that it shows Santa 3 times a day. So you can get on there with your kids. You know Santa's coming. You get to see him, feed the reindeer. It's proof positive that Santa's real.
Santa goes out every day. Sometimes he's accompanied by his dog Coco, and sometimes his elf Wesley, which is usually me.
With that $5,000 investment, you actually agree to come back within 60 to 90 days to a public event called Update Night and share what you've learned.
Since November 1, we have had about 1 million visits to the website. We've sold to date 15,000 apps.
Some of the lessons from Reindeer Cam are that things that can appear silly are in fact quite interesting when you get to know them. At Update Night, we announce what we're going to continue to invest in, usually at about $20,000, but sometimes $50,000, $100,000, up to $500,000 we can invest in projects.
One of my favorite things about Scoville Farms, you proved it's feasible. You can make habaneros delicious. I've tried it. You proved it's viable. You're making it right now off the bat for less than what you're selling it for. You've also proved that it's desirable. What you've done, in my opinion, exemplifies a really great entrepreneur. It's tough to do what you've done. And with that, we're moving forward with the $20,000 investment.
Here's another example of a product and an offering where design plays a really crucial role. Beautiful execution, beautiful design. The team is really strong and complementary. Our answer for Sitting in a Tree is yes.
As an entrepreneur, you only have so many skills and connections that you can make on your own. With Start Garden, it sort of extends the network that you have and the skills that you're able to tap into.
You know, as an entrepreneur, you always have these ideas boiling up and you're sitting in your office kind of ruminating every day about how you could make it happen. But having the resource to actually pull it off is the difference between the billion ideas people have every year and then the actual execution.
It's kind of an interesting dynamic that Drew and I have that we bring to the table. It's definitely kind of a weird venture that's sort of working out.
We don't know what's going to be able to take root here, so we're trying to get exposure to as many ideas as possible to find those things that catch fire. It all starts with an idea.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking your skiffs here across our waterlogged West Michigan. Does anyone here know that more people watch Shark Tank now than they do The Apprentice? And Shark Tank is on Friday night, TV's dead night, while The Apprentice is on Sunday night in the cash cow slot. Do you realize what a culture shift this represents? One show is about Donald Trump, the world's most media-hungry CEO, running his proteges through a series of tests to find out which one of them to which he will give a job. Shark Tank, on the other hand, is about people making their own jobs. Someone has an idea, they can prove people want it, they present the idea to investors who say, yes, I want to help you go bigger, or no, you're dead to me, or at least that's what one of them says. The Apprentice is about, please give me a job. Shark Tank is, I made a company, help me make it bigger. Michigan is undergoing that same shift in thinking right now. We were once the primordial soup of the tech industry when the tech industry was pistons and crankshafts fueled by gasoline. Then that industry consolidated as mature industries do. It's a natural progression. A few large companies grew to the point they absorbed or put out of business hundreds of small players taking their shot at becoming the American automobile. Unfortunately, what happened in the corporate world has also happened in our culture. We've been in awe of being big. Being part of a thing was more valuable than tinkering on small things. Being chosen for a job was more valued than making our own job. Now, to be clear, there's absolutely nothing wrong with jobs, but that new culture subtly looked down on people who tinkered. That was the shift that really hurt. People experimenting with unusual ideas were considered weird. They probably always will be, but maybe more than normal. As the time went on, this led to real problems because big companies grow out of small projects. Start Garden is looking for business models with big game-changing innovations. However, these innovations need a culture that's really friendly to tinkering. So around this time last year, we launched Start Garden. It came from two things we learned from over 3 years of investing in early stage startups. Many startups we encountered were often really projects that just needed a little more time and money to hunt for an opportunity. And our region's big companies and investors that are needed to foster this next generation were a little too risk averse. In other words, we didn't have a culture friendly to startups. We didn't have this culture because we didn't have a region friendly to new ideas necessarily. So we started to imagine, what if there was a place, a physical place, where you could go with an idea for a new business. You could get a little cash to experiment with, and people invested in you could be like mentors. They might not know everything, but they could at least say, I know someone who can help you. Let me introduce you. And what if entrepreneurs could take classes to learn something at that point that they needed to know it, so that they're not stuck regretting that they chose the wrong major 8 years ago. And then if one of those projects generates exciting traction, this place can keep funding it as it grows into a startup. That was the back of the napkin idea for Start Garden, to design something extremely friendly to entrepreneurs and spread that friendliness throughout the region. So here we are, 1 year later. We made some investments. To give you a sense of the volume and scale of the investments we made, let's take a look at this.
We launched Start Garden in April of 2012. It's a $15 million fund to seed startups that need to cross the $0 to $500,000 chasm, which so many entrepreneurs, particularly in the Midwest, struggle to cross. So we came up with a stair-step funding model and started investing $5,000 into 2 ideas each week. Imagine a $5,000 investment is a 10-inch cube. In our first year, we funded 95 projects that were submitted to startgarden.com. Out of those, we said no to investing further in 41. It's part of the process. We expect most experiments won't result in further funding. 22 went to the next step and received between $20,000 and $80,000. 10 entered from the outside at around $50,000 each. These companies had already proved out things we'd like to see in a good series of experiments. From this pool, 3 were funded at a total of about $150,000 each. And then there was one company, which met every expectation we'd have for anyone climbing our stair-step process. And we funded it immediately with $500,000. This brings the total amount invested in our first year to about $2,300,000. And we're just getting started.
Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So that's a look back at what we invested into projects this first year. We always say that any good investment requires a combination of financial capital, intellectual capital, and social capital. If I wanted to show a visual of the amount of intellectual capital and social capital generated this year, it would probably be a time-lapse video of this space you're sitting in. Hundreds of people flood in and out for update night each month. People pop in during the afternoon for advice from our staff and advisors. The Start Garden team constantly meets entrepreneurs to learn about their businesses. And this room would fill up again at lunchtimes on Friday, where visitors learn how to raise funds in Michigan or about accounting practices for startups. And next week, and to be even more specific, we have a panel of mompreneurs, women who had children, then had an idea, and then launched startups for kids' products. Every week, you'd see our CEO roundtables, entrepreneurs who we've put more than $20,000 into, coming together to meet and share advice with each other. There are evening classes and lean canvas workshops. Tom DeVries, one of our first advisors, who's a strategy consultant, designed a workshop to identify the most important things you need to prove out in an experiment. It's become very popular, and we're working on a way to have it twice a month. When we say that we want a place that's really friendly to entrepreneurs, we take that literally. This space on the corner of Lewis and Ionia is home to a culture. We want the culture to spread beyond these walls into the rest of the region. So in September 2012, we opened the doors here. Here is a photo of our version of a ribbon cutting. Thank you, Mary Hartwell. I see you here. On our opening day, there were 500 attendees. Since then, we've had 171 people attend our classes. The Friday Lunch and Learns have hosted 260 visitors. 559 people attended our happy hours. We've hosted over 1,400 visitors on update nights. But here's something interesting. Each Tuesday afternoon, experts from various fields make themselves available for an afternoon. Anyone working on a project can come in and talk to an IP lawyer or web designer or marketing expert. It's called Advisor Hours, and since September, over 590 hours have been donated by advisors just on those afternoons. And before I forget, for anyone outside who wants to be a part of this activity, there's a membership program. We currently have 70 members outside of our funded teams, 133 if you include our funded teams. This is all very cool, yes? Hopefully, yeah. So there's no other program like this anywhere in the world. I'm often asked, how do you feel about Start Garden? The question is usually asked in a way that I can tell that a person isn't really sure what to think. Start Garden itself is a startup. And here's how we've come to think of it over the last year. It's really 2 different businesses operating in tandem. If you separate them out, one is focused on culture building. The other is building an investment portfolio. Culture building is why Start Garden feels like an economic development project, something that exists to create a social impact. Portfolio building is why our monthly update nights feels like Shark Tank. We debate whether we're working with an entrepreneur and if their business can become a high-growth investment. Now, if you imagine that we removed the portfolio building part and just leave the culture building part, there's still a fundamental problem. Entrepreneurs in the Midwest need to cross the $0 to $500,000 gap. It's the earliest stage startups need to cross before they can prove that they're ready to scale, attract new investors, and grow further. But if we make Start Garden just about portfolio without any culture building, we lose the vital people, social connections, and business connections necessary, absolutely necessary, to make startups grow. So take a moment and imagine, last night, you're going on the road to be a stand-up comedian. If your biggest problem is that you need, is your biggest problem that you need $5,000 for gas? No. First, you need to get in front of people and be funny. You need to know how to be funny. You need people who know how to be funny to teach you the ropes. You need a network of nightclubs who want to book you, and friends who will put in a good word for you at those clubs. And you've got to figure out how to reach profitability so that you can quit your day job and spend more time on the road. You can't get there by yourself. To be clear, Start Garden is not funding comedians, although sometimes it might seem like it. It's an example we can all relate to, what it feels like to do something totally outside of our experience and start from scratch. And how vital intellectual capital and social capital are when you're just getting started. Freely available, generously given. It's the difference between a startup fund and a startup culture. So we believe we can't build a portfolio without a strong culture, and we can't have a strong culture without financial investment. They work together. Building culture is what happens in this space, all of these events and classes and socializing. Culture building is a part of the relentless process of investing in 2 ideas every week. Right now, there are 30 experiments happening at the $5,000 level, actively. Most of them within a couple miles of this building. At this point, we consider investing $20,000. At the point we consider investing $20,000 or higher, that's when a startup really joins our portfolio. If you've been to Update Night, you've witnessed this in action. At $5,000, we're quite loose with our investments. At $20,000, we become much more scrutinizing. So why is this? What's the difference between $5,000 and $20,000? Consider $5,000 for a moment. First of all, think about that amount. Think about some invoices you've received in the past, like an invoice for building a website, or an invoice for a logo or identity package, or some basic legal services, or what you thought were basic legal services at the time. Sorry, lawyers in the room. Now let's talk about $5,000. You can't necessarily launch a company with it, but the combination of $5,000 in 60 to 90 days has been an incredible discovery. We've come to really appreciate it this year. With a little money and a deadline to show results, we learn an enormous amount about people. We see the kinds of decisions they make. Often they surprise us with their resourcefulness. So let me tell you a story about one of our investments. Darren Stover adopted a puppy. He took it home and realized he had no idea what he was doing. He submitted an idea to Start Garden for a social network where users share knowledge about pet products. It won the weekly vote, and we funded it at $5,000. To be honest, when it came in, we weren't that excited. 2 months later, Darren came back, though. He noticed pet adoption services were really cash-poor labors of love. He built a crate, a starter kit, with all the necessary products for a new pet owner, and he started selling them to adoption agencies for $25, who then sold them to customers adopting a new pet for $50. Very simple, but great idea. Particularly when you consider the items in those crates can often come free to Darren as if the company gives him samples. It was that one of those sort of why didn't I think of this before ideas. None of us knew where Darren would take this idea, not even Darren. With $5,000, we find entrepreneurs who adapt to the real world in smart ways. It gives us the confidence to keep going at $20,000. On the downside, it means that a lot of those $5,000 investments can be counted as a loss. However, if you group them all together as one startup that we put $250,000 into and then it failed, it's not that crazy. A $15 million portfolio would expect to lose quite a few $250,000 investments. On the upside, when we decide to invest $250,000 into one of our startups, that spent time in this fitness landscape that we've created, our confidence is much higher. So people often ask, how do you feel about Start Garden? And now that you understand a bit more about why we do what we do, I'll let you know. All of my expectations have been exceeded for year one, and I'm very bullish about the investments we've made this first year. I was surprised by the amount of startups that walked through our doors and through our website. The other question we're asked a lot is, when do you expect to make money? At the beginning, we imagined Start Garden as a 3-year experiment. We're at the end of year one. After 3 years, our goal is to have about a dozen companies, each one that we would own a percentage of. They're performing extremely well and show signs of growing exponentially in value. If that happens, it's evidence that the experiment is working and we can potentially keep going with another fund. For example, let's say that Start Garden spends $500,000 to buy 20% of a company that's worth $2 million in 2013. In 2018, that company has grown to be worth $20 million. Our 20% grew to be worth $4 million. Over the next 7 to 10 years, we make money when a handful of our portfolio companies grow exponentially like that. We put a lot of money in the first 3 years, and even though we're only 1 year in, we really like the way things are shaping up. Last April, Start Garden's very first week of operation, we chose an idea for a $5,000 investment. The entrepreneur presented at our very first update night in July. That night, we funded him to continue his experiment with another $50,000. Since then, he continues to impress us. Not long ago, we put in another $80,000. He's been with us since week one, so it seems appropriate that he should join us on our anniversary. So Mike Miller, would you mind sharing your story with us?
Thank you, Rick, very much. Thank you. I cannot believe it's been a year. It has been an extraordinary journey. And when they asked me if I would be available and willing to come and talk, I have basically become an evangelist with things related to Start Garden. This group has just been absolutely amazing to work with and gave us an opportunity to actually go from this really kind of neat and interesting idea that some moms around the country kind of liked to actually becoming a company. And one of the questions that the guys told me that they wanted me to address was, why did I do this? Why did I start Next Mile? And what gave us the motivation to continue? Because as an entrepreneur, and frankly, I'm the same age as these folks. I've just been at this for the same period, or for a longer period of time, I think. You want to feel old, you come to the CEO luncheon and you realize that the next person is probably 20 years younger than you, talking about this interweb thing and SEO and whatever. The easiest way for me to address and answer the question of why I started this is a Facebook post that I got at about 4 o'clock this morning. Timing was absolutely perfect. This was actually a mom that posted this yesterday, somehow deleted it, and went back and rewrote it. But this is typical of what we find with the folks that we're trying to serve. This is a pain-free testimonial. I think I deleted my previous post by accident, so here's another. My 10-year-old son, who plays basketball and soccer, was diagnosed with Sever's disease. Over the course of 6 months, his pain had progressed to the point he was running with a horrible limp. He reminded me of a 90-year-old man trying to run. After at least $500 worth of new shoes, gel heel cups, rest, green feet, and Spenco insoles, ibuprofen, ice, stretching, nothing was giving him relief. Not to mention the gas from driving to all the sports stores locally to ask them for their advice. The sporting stores knew how to help adults, but not one had anything for the youth foot. I stumbled across your website and said, why not give it a try? Nothing else has worked. I'm so happy I did. My son was up and running without a limp at the first practice, and the pain was nearly gone by the second practice. It has kept him in the game. Thank you, a customer for life. I've recommended this to friends and other moms. You can tell I get a little emotional about this. That's why I do what I do. I've got a full-time job. When you talk about passion, I look at what my experience was as a kid growing up playing sports. And it was very different than what kids experience now. You never see a pickup game. You never see a vacant lot with a group of kids dividing up into a team and the all-time quarterback, we're going to play a game of 500. There's a parent on the sideline yelling at the kids, run, run, run. Okay? And they're starting ever younger. When we started this project, the research told us that the kids that were dealing with the heel and knee pain problems that we were trying to address were between the ages of 8 and 14. So we figured that our biggest group of boys and girls that we would be focused on were in the middle of that age group. The number one selling product for us by volume is in the smallest sizes, and we have and that goes down to a size 3 for the boys, and we've got requests coming in every day for size 2, size 1.5. We're starting our kids ever younger, pushing them ever longer, pushing them ever harder. So why do I do what I do? Is because kids like to play, okay? And parents like to watch their kids have fun. And if you can keep a kid playing a game that they love, and learning all the things, not just about how to play the game, but all the things that it is to be on a team, to set a goal and to excel, there's nothing better. I would not have been able to do that, frankly, if it had not been for this team. We had entered we moved here 2 years ago from Wisconsin. We had gone through the entrepreneurship program at the university. This actually started as a student project. I had worked in finance for about 25 years and decided to go get my MBA. I had the opportunity to go weekends or daytime evenings with my peer group, the grown-ups, the folks that know it all because of our experience. And I decided instead to go full-time daytime with the kids. And I got to tell you, my generation way underestimates folks. We like to hire resumes versus, I can tell you, if you come and you listen to the conversation with these young folks, by comparison, at the CEO lunch, they are amazing thinkers, and they're a lot deeper thinkers than what our generation also oftentimes gives them credit for being. These are incredibly, incredibly bright people, and they're very much the group that I went to school with to get my MBA. We won at the advanced manufacturing category of the Wisconsin Governor's Business Plan competition. We thought we were on our way. Nobody was interested in a consumer good like a sport insole, such as what we were making. It didn't matter if it worked. We've put this in about 2,500 athlete shoes now. We've got about over 90% efficacy in terms of pain reduction. Nobody cared until I came to this community, and largely with the innovative entrepreneurial approach of the Start Garden team. And the resources, it isn't just the money, it isn't about the money, it's really about the network. I've got Joel Leo, we've improved through his work on our SEO, our website traffic, our click-through rate. We just looked this morning and we're in the 300% improvement range in many of the measurements. You look at the folks with Mighty. Between Joel and Mighty, they had the courage to tell me that my website, my baby, was ugly. That takes a lot of courage, and they were right. They forced me to step back. The $5,000, when they gave it to me, they said, you need to run an experiment. I said, I've been at this since 2008. I know everything. What could I possibly experiment with? And they forced me to take a step back, their team, and really understand some of the things that I was taking for granted. And we ran a very quick test, $1,500 I think it was, and we realized that we could grow our sales through the website. So with that, I just got to say thank you to Rick and his team for the tremendous opportunity and support of this last year that absolutely went by in a blink. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mike. I started off by mentioning Shark Tank. The comparison is obvious to what Start Garden does. I literally hear, I've actually never watched Shark Tank, but people all the time, they're like, is this a Shark Tank type thing? I'm like, nah, sort of, not really. Anyway, but the comparison is somewhat obvious to what Start Garden does. There are things we do that Shark Tank does not. From what we shared this morning, there's a lot more that's going on here. I'll tell you the way I see it. Start Garden is a platform to change the culture of this region. Shark Tank does not ask hundreds of regional businesses to help guide these startups. It doesn't spin out projects every single week that become temporary business experiments all over the region. It doesn't set up learning opportunities to make its contestants better at what they need to accomplish on a shoestring. Start Garden is a platform to help us change our behavior. It encourages people to be aggressive, to stop dreaming, and to start tinkering. This region decided to stop waiting for global companies to relocate here, and instead we're making our own jobs. with whatever we have. If you believe that in that culture change, help us continue to change it. Cultures do not change when a leader says, hey, yesterday we were one kind of culture, but now we're another kind. It doesn't happen like that. Cultures change with small, repeated actions. Thousands of people making small movements in the same direction, again and again and again. Stark Garden's mere existence doesn't change culture, but our actions that we take every day hopefully do. That's why we've kept the pedal down on making 2 investments every single week. It's why this team announces our investment decisions in front of 200 people at update night. It's why we pay rent on a 5,000 square foot storefront, so we can be on the street, ever present, always accessible. It's why we host advisors every week and coordinate classes, because entrepreneurs do not have the time to go back to school whenever they need to learn something new. None of the things I just mentioned are typical of a venture capital firm. Most firms are not trying to change culture. We are. So imagine your own business. Imagine it has 2 parts. One is the part where you make a profit. You pay the rent and you keep people employed. The other part is the work you do to change culture. You work to change culture because you believe that we won't have a region full of entrepreneurs generating new value and creating new businesses without this change. Most of you won't and don't have to devote as much of your time and resources as Stark Garden towards making this change. Your company does not have to be the catalyst at the center of that change. However, your company can't afford to sit outside and watch either, because a catalyst, like Stark Garden, is just a beginning. A change is thousands of people doing small things in the same direction every day. This space is a stage for you to make that statement. It's not just a stage for projects we fund, but the visionary players in this ecosystem. The people and companies in this region doing small things every day to make this place more innovative, more entrepreneurial, a place that's friendly to new ideas. We've created a way for you to publicly show this ecosystem of entrepreneurs and people helping entrepreneurs that you're doing small things with us in the same direction. It starts with becoming a financial sponsor. On the other side of the wall behind me is our new sponsor gallery. These are the players committed to making this region friendly to entrepreneurs. A financial commitment goes a long way toward funding this culture change. But there's more. Last month, Mutually Human, a software development firm, sponsored Update Night. They stood in front of a crowd of 200 people who were excited to hear about the new business projects coming through Stark Garden. Mutually Human announced that they are part of building a new makerspace here in Grand Rapids, where people can literally tinker with 3D printers and other prototyping tools to make their ideas real. It's very cool, but it's not just altruistic. They know startups need software. They recognize software embedded in actual products is a trend that's growing. So they've positioned themselves very close to the ground floor, and they used our platform to make that position public. It's an example of a company that doesn't have to devote as much time or resources as Stark Garden to making a culture change. But they made a commitment to take some action, moving in the same direction, and they made that statement very public by being a financial sponsor. Now, you may think, sponsorship for a venture capital firm? Don't they have money? I mentioned that we believe culture building and portfolio building are connected. Right now, they're financially connected with the Stark Garden Fund. What that means is that in the not too distant future, we'll have some difficult decisions to make. Like, do we invest in one of our portfolio companies, or do we put that money toward classes? Do we host an event for investors to meet our startups, or do we host an update night, which is for the community to learn about these experiments, what it takes to get a business going? If you value the culture change, please help us to keep it going. Every sponsorship fuels the activity in this space, turning ideas into projects and projects into startups. Hopefully every one of you is already making small steps in that same direction. So please make them publicly. We invite you to become a sponsor. Join us on the center stage as part of this culture change. So now I'd like to introduce Amanda Chaco. Amanda, will you join me for a moment? Sure. Amanda is the point person who can tell you more about sponsorship. Amanda will follow up with you if you fill out one of the cards in our Stark Garden notebooks on the seats that you came in on. We have it right on the seat of the table, if you wish, though I must warn you, Amanda is a scrappy New Yorker, Brooklynite, more specifically. She may follow up with you even if you don't fill out a card. But I can assure you, she is somebody that you definitely want to know. She knows more about startup activity in the state of Michigan than anybody else on our staff. So thank you, Amanda. So let's recap a minute. In our first year, Start Garden invested $2.3 million in new businesses, ideas, and startups. Thousands of people have come through this space since it opened in September. We funded a lot of crazy ideas, and more brilliant ideas joined our portfolio than I would have imagined would have a year ago. It's been a good year, so for those of us who helped us get here, thank you so much. For those of us who will help us next year, we're looking forward to getting to know you better. So that's the state of the Start Garden, year one. Thank you for coming out, and enjoy the space and stay dry and non-hit by lightning. Thank you. Hello, is that still working? I'd be happy to just answer some questions if people have questions about this first year and what's going on in the space. Zach, obviously, you can get going if you need to get on to other things, but yeah. Oh, we answered all questions, I guess.
I can't see.
Yeah.
Where did most of the ideas or projects come from? I remember you talking about wanting to attract people from outside the region too, so I'm just kind of curious if you know.
I don't have a specific breakdown to give you. I mean, the general way to look at it is that probably 80% came within a 3-hour drive. Over 80% came within kind of a 3-hour drive. The filter that we're looking at on the $5,000 investments, and certainly for anything later, is how are they going to benefit from the ecosystem in West Michigan, and how are they going to contribute to the ecosystem in West Michigan? So that's kind of a somewhat hazy way to look at it, but sometimes people have strong local ties, but it makes more sense for them to be in New York or LA or whatever makes sense for their business. But that's sort of the lens that we look at. Yes?
Since Mike already classified himself as an older entrepreneur, can you speak to the youngest that you had in the space?
Youngest entrepreneurs, probably, I don't have an age, but we have several folks that are still in college that come through, and there's definitely an ongoing flow of people that are part of sometimes engineering departments or entrepreneurial programs at area colleges that are submitting things to Start Garden and that we've funded. Yes, Kevin.
Kevin Sherman, Grand Valley State University. We just had last week a regional business plan competition where 6 plans from all the colleges and universities came out. 4 of them had already come to the Start Garden. Start Garden.
Cool. Wonderful. Thank you. That's great to hear. 4 out of 6 of the regional business plan competition, for those that couldn't hear, had come through Start Garden. So, yes, Cam.
You break down the startups by category, manufacturing, technology.
It's really hard to classify them, and we don't really look at what the classification is of things when they come in. We're very, very broad, especially at the $5,000 level. If you have like we're going to build a rocket ship or something, we probably won't invest. Although if there's some incremental step you can take towards that, and it seems like you could get there, we'll consider anything. But so I don't really have a breakdown of what's what within it. A lot of things have crossover between sort of internet-enabled service things with physical products, and yeah. So we've seen a number of physical products come through, actually more than we maybe would have thought on the front end of this.
I was actually checking the other day, and I think it's a third of the investments are physical products at this point.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming out. Please enjoy the coffee and the snacks, and have a great day.